Welcome back with a smiling face. Important note before starting, if you are a fan of audio stories, then our Patreon account is the best platform for you. Join us on Patreon for the best audiobooks ever. The Time of Reckoning. Episode 5. Chapter 29 to 38. 29. Tori kept searching. There wasn't much more, just enough to confirm what we'd already figured out. Andrew had been part of the plot to turn Derek over to the pack. And he hadn't been anyone's hostage. So Andrew is part of the Edison group. Tori said. That doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't. I pushed the laptop back and sat on the desk. You were with me at the laboratory. Between the two of us, we saw a lot of staff members. Did you recognize any of them that night at Andrew's? That was a security team. We never got a chance to see them before. Sure we did. Simon, Derek, and I did on the night we escaped Lyle House. You and I did after we escaped the Edison group. What we saw, both times, was mainly staff with only a couple of guards. If they had some high-powered security team, wouldn't they have called them in for that? Maybe it was the staff and the guards. How would we know? They were wearing, she looked at me. They were wearing things on their hats, covering their faces. They didn't do that at the warehouse when they were chasing us. Or the night Derek and I escaped Lyle House. Why hide their faces when we'd already seen them? I thought back to that night. You weren't the only one who got away too easily. Andrew, you mean? Not just him. I was hiding up in a tree. One of the women found me. I dropped on top of her. Stupid thing to do, but it worked. She was knocked out cold. Or so I thought. See, we're both just that good. Apparently not. We tried to exchange a smile. The Edison group didn't track us to Andrew's, I said. That's what my mom was trying to tell me. If you guys are going to talk about that, you might want to go up on the roof, Derek rumbled from the doorway. Or be a little quieter. I could hear you from down the hall. Because you've got bionic hearing, Tori said. I started to say something, but Derek beat me to it. Simon had to go talk to Andrew. I thought maybe you, he glanced at Tori, annoyed, like she was eavesdropping. I thought there might be old files in the attic. You want to come up and see? Maybe get some more info on Dr. Banks. I had to stifle the urge to say sure. So what if we'd just discovered that the people giving us refuge were the same ones who tried to kill us 3 nights ago? Finding out whether Derek liked me was so much more important. I can't, I said. That's okay, he cut in, starting to retreat. I stepped forward to stop him. I would. But Chloe can't come out to play right now, Tori said. She's in the middle of helping me unravel a conspiracy, a matter of life or death. Our life or death. The Edison group didn't attack us at Andrew's place, I said. He did. Andrew and the others. I told Derek what we'd found. For once, I hoped he'd say I was wrong, that my logic was flawed and there was a perfectly reasonable alternate explanation. But when I finished, he swore. Then he paced, swearing some more, until he stopped and shoved his hair back. We're wrong, aren't we? I said. We misinterpreted the data. No, you didn't. It was my turn to swear then, making Tori arch her brows. I'm just mad at myself, Derek said. I saw the possibility. I wondered whether we all got away too easily that night at Andrew's. I wondered why they shot at us when they used darts before. I wondered why they covered their faces. I just never thought it could have anything to do with Andrew. I did think he might be behind the kidnapping attempt last night, though. But you said that I trusted Andrew. I did. But he thinks I'd be better off with my own kind, so I wanted to see his reaction. That told me he wasn't involved. Or so I thought. He seemed genuinely surprised, I said. Furious, even. Guess he's a good actor, Tori said. Okay, so am I the only one who's wondering why they went through the trouble of that fake Edison group attack when we were already going to Andrew's place? Going doesn't mean staying, Derek said. Hey. We might not stay with Andrew, I said. If things didn't quite go our way. We've already run away twice. So if they convinced us the Edison group had tracked us down and was lurking out there, prepared to shoot to kill, that would trap us better than guard dogs and barbed wire. I quickly looked at the door. You said Simon was with. Derek swore. Right. He's with Andrew. I'm sure whatever's going on here, hurting Simon isn't part of the plan, but I'll go get him. I'll remind him it's past his snack time. He needs to have morning and afternoon snacks for his blood sugar, so that won't sound suspicious. I nodded. We need to be careful. Screw caution, Tori said. I'm outta here. We looked at her. Well, I am. As long as someone comes with me. We kept looking at her. She sighed. Fine, but when everything goes to hell, just remember, I get to blame you guys, because I wanted to leave right away. We are leaving right away, Derek said, just as soon as we know as much as possible about their plans. You said that was Margaret's laptop, not Andrew's, right? I nodded. But I know a way to get Andrew's, if you want Tori to search it. Good. Do that. I want to know exactly what they have in mind. 30. Andrew. I peeked into the kitchen, where he was getting a snack with the guys. That book you were going to let me read. Oh, right. My laptop is in the office. Should be all powered up. Is there a password? He smiled. Nope. As valuable as I think unpublished manuscripts are, there's not really a black market for them. There's a link to the book right on the desktop for you. He gave me the title. Tori wanted to take a look, too, if that's okay. Absolutely. The more feedback I can get from the target audience, the better. If anything sticks out, problems with the characters, the plot, the language, let me know. Tori rolled her eyes at the lack of security on Andrew's laptop. Like most people who weren't tech-savvy, he presumed if he deleted stuff, it was gone. Or maybe he knew traces remained, but figured we wouldn't know how to find them. And he'd have been right, if we didn't have Tori. We started with an email search and found the ones he'd exchanged with Margaret, removing any doubt it'd been him. There were also a few between him and Tomas, where Andrew seemed determined to ensure a safe transfer of Derek to the pack. Had he really been that concerned for Derek's safety? Liam clearly had orders to kill if necessary. Was that decision made behind Andrew's back? That would explain why he'd seemed so genuinely shocked when he'd found out what had happened to Derek and me. Or maybe I just wasn't ready to see Andrew as one of the bad guys yet. I'd liked him. I really had. Yet it only took one more email for those feelings to evaporate, one that had nothing to do with Liam and Russell or the Edison group. When Tori found it, we both read it and read it again, neither of us saying a word until I managed a shaky, I'd better get the guys. I'll see if there's more, she said as I raced off. I finally tracked down Derek. He was alone in the library, thumbing through a book. Found you, I said on a sigh of relief. He turned. His lips curved in a quarter smile, gaze softening in a way that did something to my insides, made me pull up short, momentarily forgetting why I was there. Is Simon around? He blinked, then turned back to the shelf. He's upstairs. He's really about Andrew, so that's probably the safest place for him until we're ready to go, or he'll say something to him we don't want said. You need him. Actually, maybe I should show you first. He glanced over his shoulder, frowning. We found something. Oh. He paused, like he was mentally shifting gears, then nodded and followed me out. Tori swiveled in her seat as we came in. There are more, she said. He sent one every couple of weeks. The last one was only a few days ago. Good, I said. Would you mind keeping an eye on Andrew? Sure. She took off. Wait. I grabbed Derek's sleeve as he headed for the chair Tori had vacated. I wanted to say something. I didn't know what. But there was no way to tell him that wouldn't be just as much of a shock, so I ended up stupidly murmuring, never mind. When he read what was on the screen, he went absolutely still, like he wasn't even breathing. After a few seconds, he yanked the laptop closer, leaning in to read it again. And again. Finally, he pushed back the chair and exhaled. He's alive, I said. Your dad's alive. He looked up at me and, I couldn't help it, I threw my arms around his neck and hugged him. Then I realized what I was doing. I let go, backing away, tripping over my feet, stammering, I am sorry. I'm happy for you. I know. Still sitting, he reached out and pulled me toward him. We stayed there, looking at each other, his hand still wrapped in my shirt hem, my heart hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. There's more, I said after a few seconds. More emails, Tori said. He nodded and swiveled back to the computer, making room for me. When I inched closer, not wanting to intrude, he tugged me in front of him and I stumbled, half falling onto his lap. I tried to scramble up, cheeks burning, but he pulled me down onto his knee, one arm going around my waist, tentative, as if to say, is this okay? It was, even if my blood pounded in my ears so hard I couldn't think. Thankfully, I had my back to him because I was sure my cheeks were scarlet. I hadn't misunderstood his look earlier. This was something. Or it would become something, I hoped. God, I hoped. Right now, though, there was too much else going on. I hated that, but I was kind of glad of it, too, giving my brain time to stop spinning. After a second still perched on Derek's knee, I forced my attention back to the screen. I read the first email again. Dated 2 months ago, it was a chain of 3 messages, the first, short and to the point. It's Kit. Got myself in some trouble. Do you know where the boys are? Andrew answered. No, I don't. What kind of trouble? How can I help? The reply was longer. Nast's caught up with me. Saw an article on D, tracked me down before I could run. Went with them to distract them from the boys. Kept me a few months until I finally gave them what they wanted. The boys are long gone. Thought EG, but no sign at the lab. Maybe Nast's? Child services? No idea. I need help, buddy. Anything you can do? Please. He signed off, giving a phone number and saying both it and the email address were temporary, but he'd be in touch again in a couple of weeks. I flipped to the next email as Derek read over my shoulder. There were 3 more of the same Mr. B begging for news, Andrew saying he was looking for Simon and Derek, but his Edison Group contacts swore the boys weren't there. The last one from Mr. B was dated 3 days ago, when Andrew had supposedly been held hostage by the Edison Group. That meant he'd gotten this after he knew where Simon and Derek were. "There's one more on the list," Derek said. It must be a reply. It was, sent the night when Andrew and the others had been staking out his cottage, waiting to make their fake SWAT team swoop and gather us up. Still nothing. I might have a lead, though. A guy who works for the Cortezes says there's a rumor they're holding a couple of teenage boys. I'll call as soon as I have more. Cortezes? I said. A cabal, like the Nasts. Corporations run by sorcerers. Rich and powerful. More mafia than Wall Street, though. So Andrew was lying. Not just lying. Trying to send Dad on a wild goose chase when he knew exactly where we were. This changes everything. He nodded. We need to get out of here. He nodded again, but didn't move. I leaned forward to grab a pen and paper from Andrew's desk, then jotted down the latest email address and phone number. When I handed it to Derek, he took a second to even notice my outstretched hand. "You okay?" I said, twisting to face him. "Yeah, just, Andrew. Getting rid of me, I could see. But keeping Dad away, Dad trusted him. And now we can't," I said. "Which sucks, but the main thing is that your dad's alive." He smiled, hesitant at first, then a blazing grin broke through that made my heart stop. I recovered and grinned back and went to throw my arms around his neck, then stopped, blushing. Before I could pull back, he caught my elbows and put my arms around his neck and pulled me into a hug. Then he jumped, chair swiveling so fast I nearly went flying. I heard footsteps in the hall and I scrambled off his lap just as Simon swung in, breathing heavily, like he'd come running. "Tori said you wanted to see me?" "Something about Dad." I moved aside so Derek could show him the emails, then stepped into the hall to watch for Andrew and to leave them alone. This was the news they'd been waiting for and they'd gone through thinking it might never come, so I tried not to eavesdrop. "Chloe." Derek stood in the doorway. He motioned me back in. Simon was at the keyboard, control panel open. "There's no internet connection," I said, "if that's what you're looking for." "No phone either." "Andrew has a cell," Simon said. "Too risky," Derek said. "There was a pay phone at the service station. We'll call on our way out, set up a place to meet him." Simon's eyes lit up at the thought of finally talking to his dad. Then they clouded with anger, the thrill of seeing news from his dad warring with the pain of Andrew's betrayal. "So we're going now, right?" I said. "Yeah," Derek said. "We're going." 31. By now, we were experts at this escaping thing. We filled Tori in, then split up to gather what we needed: clothes, money, food. We took turns, 2 packing while the other 2 hung out, talking so Andrew didn't wonder why he had a house with 4 teenagers in it and sudden silence. Thankfully Andrew spent the whole time in the kitchen. I don't think any of us could have faced him. Tori and I were on make our presence known duty when Derek slipped in with an armful of ski jackets. "Found these in the basement," he said. "It got cold last time." He passed me a red one and gave Tori a blue one. "Simon's finding one that fits, then coming up. We'll head out the back door. You 3 will go on ahead. I'll stay inside and make sure Andrew doesn't come out until you're safe in the woods." "And if he does?" I asked. Derek rubbed his mouth, meaning he'd rather not plan for that possibility. "Don't tell me you'll have any problem taking him out," Tori said. "After what he did to you." I say we handle him now, save us all this sneaking around. I'll use the binding spell. You guys tie him up. Works for me, Simon said, coming up behind us. I still remember my knots from Scouts. Derek hesitated. Then he looked at me, which surprised me a little, and I said, I agree, not really sure he was looking for that, but he nodded, and I said, more firmly, it's the best way. Otherwise, once he figures out we're gone, he'll. The doorbell rang. I wasn't the only one who jumped. Derek grabbed our bags, ready to bolt. Guys! Andrew called. Can someone get that? It's Margaret. That makes things a little tougher, Tori murmured. But not much. She's old, and she's just a necromancer. A glance at me. Sorry. Guys. Andrew's footsteps tapped down the hall. Got it. Simon called. We'll take out Margaret first, Derek murmured. Tori can bind her. Simon can tie her. I'll go for Andrew. Chloe? Move the coats and bags into the closet, just in case. Move the coat and bags? Sometimes I really wished my powers were a little more, well, powerful. I hefted 2 backpacks as Derek headed for the kitchen and Tori and Simon went to the front door. I was coming back for the second load when I heard Margaret's voice. Had Tori's binding spell failed? This is Gordon, Margaret was saying. And this is Roxanne. With Russell and Gwen gone, we thought it was safe to bring a few more of our members in to meet you. Now, let's all go review our plans. Tori wanted to take on all 4, but suggested it only half-heartedly. 4 adults versus 4 kids meant bad odds, especially when we had no idea what supernatural types Gordon and Roxanne were. Our plan, then, was to sneak out as soon as they started their meeting. Except they wanted us in on that meeting. Simon opted out. He couldn't face Andrews, so Derek and I covered for him. I was the one they most wanted to talk to anyway, asking more questions about the Edison Group laboratory and staff. I had to call on all my years of drama training to pull off that performance. That, and not look in Andrew's direction any more than absolutely necessary. I seethed the whole time, knowing they didn't care what I said, that they weren't planning on going back. I had no idea what they were planning, only that we weren't sticking around long enough to find out. Finally, they released us. Get Simon, Derek whispered to Tori as we hurried down the hall. I'm going to move the bags out to the woods. Chloe? Cover me. It would make more sense for Tori, the girl with the spells, to cover him, but I didn't suggest it. Derek still didn't trust her enough for that. Tori didn't even make it as far as the stairs, when a voice called, "Kids? Are you back here?" Derek swore. It was Gordon, the new guy. Over here, I said, walking to where he stood in the hall. Derek followed. Gordon was about Andrew's age, average height, with a potbelly and graying beard, the kind of guy who'd be recruited to play the office Santa. Do they need us again? I asked. No, they're busy making plans, so I thought I'd say hi. We didn't get much of a chance to chat in there. He walked over to Derek and beamed a wide smile, shaking his hand. You don't remember me, do you? I'm not surprised. You were just a little guy the last time we met. I used to work with your dad. We played poker on Tuesdays. He clapped a hand on Derek's shoulder and steered him into the living room. Andrew tells me you're quite the science whiz. I teach physics over at. Gordon kept talking, leading Derek into the next room. Derek shot me a look, annoyance mingled with frustration. When I opened my mouth, though, he shook his head. We were stuck. Again. Are we going? Tori whispered, returning with Simon. Not yet. Gordon eventually called us all in. He'd known my aunt and Tori's mom, so now he wanted to get to know us a little better, too. Yesterday, we'd all have been thrilled with the chance to make a good impression and prove we were normal kids. Now, it was just creepy, giving our life stories to a guy who might be ready to kill us if our powers proved as uncontrollable as he feared. After the meeting, they all decided to stay for dinner, and there was no way for us to get out, not all four of us with our backpacks. Can we leave them behind? I asked. We've got money. What if? Tori. Andrew called. Could you give me a hand with dinner? Actually, she began. Andrew popped his head around the corner. Seeing all four of us clustered in the hall, he frowned, then forced a smile. Am I interrupting something? Just making plans for a breakout, Tori said. My gut twisted, eyes widening. We were hoping to sneak off for ice cream after dinner, she explained. Ah. Andrew ran his hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. I know you kids are tired of being cooped up here. Developing serious cabin fever, Tori said. Plus, my housekeeping wages are burning a hole in my pocket. We'll be careful, and we'll be back before dark. I know, but, no, guys. Sorry. No more going out. He tried for a smile. We'll be leaving for Buffalo tomorrow and I promise we'll stop for ice cream on the way. Now, if I can get your help, Tori. He led her away. He knows, Simon said as we sat in the games room, pretending to play Yahtzee. It sure feels that way, I said. But maybe we're just paranoid. We both looked at Derek. He shook the dice onto the table a few times, deep in thought, then said, I think we're okay. We're just nervous. We want out so it feels like they're blocking us. Simon exhaled and tried to settle into his seat, fingers drumming his leg. We should wait until tonight, Derek said. Head to bed, then go after Andrew when he's asleep. The others will be long gone by then, and that'll buy us more time. No one will realize he's in trouble until morning. Makes sense, Simon said. Question is, are we going to make it that long without going nuts? He stopped as Derek cocked his head, then pivoted toward the door. Trouble? Simon whispered. Cell phone. Yeah, they've all got them. So. They're that way. Derek pointed left. I'm hearing a muffled ring from the front door, where they left their coats. Okay, still not. Simon shot up straight. Cell phone. Dad. He scrambled up. Where's the number? Derek held the paper with the number just out of his reach. Cool it. Okay, okay. Simon took another deep breath, forcing himself to relax. Cooled. Derek handed it over. I hung back, again reluctant to intrude, but Derek motioned me along. As we neared the front door, he waved Simon ahead, whispering that we'd stand guard while he called. So what did you think of that book Andrew is editing? Derek asked. I gaped up at him. Very attractive, I'm sure. Talk to me, Derek whispered. Right. Sorry. It's good so far. No signal, Simon hissed, peeking around the corner. Move around, Derek whispered back. Andrew's been using his. While Simon did that, I pretended to talk about the book, which wasn't easy when I hadn't read so much as a single line. So I blathered on with general comments about pacing and style, until Simon peeked again, waving frantically, phone at his ear as he mouthed its ringing. Derek motioned him back behind the corner, then told me to keep talking. I did, though I couldn't help hearing Simon. "Dad? It's me. Simon." His voice cracked and he cleared his throat. "Fine. Well, okay. Pause. He's right here. With me. We're with Andrew." Pause. "I know. We're trying to pause." "No. Not Andrew's. It's a safe house. Belonged to a guy named Todd Banks." "Big old dad?" "Dad." Derek strode off, motioning for me to stand watch. "Signal," Simon whispered. Derek started to say something, then swung around the corner, gaze fixed down the hall. Sure enough, a second later, I heard footsteps. "Guys. Andrew. Dinner. Coming." I called. "Let me try," Simon began. "No," Derek said. "I need to erase the outgoing call. Get in the kitchen with Chloe. We'll phone again from the service station tonight." Everyone picked at dinner, forcing down only enough to make it look good. Derek kept whispering for us to eat, fill our stomachs, but he barely finished himself, too busy straining to hear the ring of the cell phone, worried his dad might call back and expose us. He didn't. From what I'd heard of their dad, Derek got his cautious streak from him. Where a normal person would automatically call back after being disconnected, I suspected their dad would look up the number first, and something about it, like Gordon's name attached to the listing, had stopped him. He wouldn't try calling Andrew, either. The fact that Andrew hadn't told him we were with him spelled trouble. He wouldn't make contact. He'd just come looking for his boys. Had he heard the part about us being in Dr. Banks's house? Did he know where that was? If so, would he come for us too late, get captured trying to save his sons after they'd left? I reminded myself that the service station was only a 15-minute walk away. We could warn Mr. B before he tried anything. Unless he was close enough to the house to come for us before we left, a nice thought, but I knew we couldn't count on it and probably shouldn't even hope. We had a plan. We'd get out safely, find Mr. B, and with his help rescue Aunt Lauren and Ray. 32. I retreated to my room at 9. Tori was there, engrossed in the Count of Monte Cristo. She didn't do more than wave until she finished her chapter. We talked for a while. Nothing important. Just talk, struggling to stay calm as we prayed for time to speed up. We were almost there, though. Just a few more hours. Derek said Andrew never went to bed before midnight. If we wanted to get him after he was sound asleep, that meant waiting until 2. To my surprise, I fell asleep, so soundly that I didn't hear the alarm on the watch Derek had given me earlier. I woke to Tori shaking me with one hand, while trying to shut off the alarm with the other. I yawned and blinked hard. "Running away after you've barely slept in a week isn't a great idea," she said. Luckily, I anticipated this. She popped open a can of Coke and handed it to me. "Not as good as coffee," she said. "But I bet you don't drink coffee, do you?" I shook my head as I gulped it. "Kids," she said, rolling her eyes. The door flew open, Simon rushing in. "Excuse me," Tori said. "It's Derek," he said to me. "I can't wake him up." We ran from the room. Derek was still in his bed, sprawled, the sheets draped onto the floor. He lay on his stomach wearing only his boxers. I shook his shoulder. My fingers were cool from the soda can, but he still didn't move. "He's breathing," Simon whispered. "He just won't wake up." Tori walked toward the bed. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her give Derek a once-over. You know, from this angle, he doesn't look too bad, she said. I glared at her. I'm just saying. I leaned over Derek, calling him as loudly as I dared. Personally, I'm more a running back girl myself, Tori said. But if you like the linebacker type, he's... My glower shut her up. You're in my light, I said, waving her aside. Do you know first aid, Chloe? I shook my head. Then you're in my light. Scoot. I let her through. She checked Derek's pulse and his breathing, saying both seemed okay, then leaned down to his face. Nothing weird on his breath. Smells like toothpaste. Derek's eyes opened, and the first thing he saw was Tori's face inches from his. He jumped and let out an oath. Simon cracked up. I madly motioned for him to be quiet. Are you okay? I asked Derek. He is now, Simon said. After Tori jump-started his heart. We couldn't wake you up, I said. Tori was making sure you were okay. He kept blinking, disoriented. I have a Coke in my eye, began. I'll grab it, Tori said. I turned back to Derek. He was still blinking. Derek. Yet. He mumbled, like he was talking through marbles, then made a face and cleared his throat. How do you feel? I asked. Tired. Must have been sleeping hard. Like a rock, Simon said. Do you feel groggy? I asked. Yet. He made a face again. What did I eat last night? A chill ran through me. Does your mouth feel fuzzy? Yet. He swore and pushed himself up. I grabbed the Coke from Tori as she came back. He's been drugged. Drugged? Simon paused only a second, then said, Andrew. I'll grab our bags, Tori said. We'd taken them to our rooms last night, worrying they'd be found in the closet downstairs. I got Derek's as he chugged the rest of the Coke. Andrew brought us sodas last night, before bed, Simon said as he took his bag. And he said which one was Derek's. He didn't need to. Mine's always diet. I looked at Derek as he wiped his hand over his mouth. Are you going to be okay? Yet. Just let me get dressed. Why would Andrew drug Derek? Were they coming for him tonight? Or had our paranoia been well placed and the group knew exactly what we were up to? Either way, our best fighter was out of commission. I'll stay with Derek, I said. Simon, can you cover Tori and get to Andrew's room? He glanced at Derek for confirmation. Derek blinked hard, focusing, then managed a slurred, yet. Do that. But be careful, I said. There's a good chance Andrew's not in his bed. They came back 10 minutes later. He's not here, Simon whispered. What? There's no sign of him anywhere, Tori said. The truck's outside, but there aren't any lights on in the house. And his shoes are gone, Simon said. Meeting someone, I whispered. Someone must be here to take Derek, and Andrew's outside with him, trying to figure out how to do this. Or he's been taken, Tori said. Derek rubbed his face, then gave his head a sharp shake. Forget Andrew. Let's just go and be careful. Simon threw Derek's arm over his shoulders, despite his brother's protests. I carried Derek's bag as well as my own, Tori had Simon's. We peered down the dark hall. Derek sniffed. The last trace of Andrew was old, meaning he hadn't come upstairs since delivering the sodas. Derek stood at the top of the main staircase and listened, then shook his head. No sounds from below. We headed for the stairs at the back of the house, the narrow ones we'd found earlier, probably for servants once upon a time. It was one area Tori hadn't cleaned nor had anyone in years, apparently, and I had to cover my nose and mouth so dust didn't set me sneezing. When we reached the bottom, I was in the lead, Tori right behind me, and Simon helping Derek at the rear. The stairs ended at a door. I turned the knob slowly, trying to be quiet. It twisted part-way, then stopped. I pushed. The door didn't budge. Tori shouldered past me and tried. "Locked," she whispered. "I thought you guys checked all the doors last night," Simon said. "We did. It was open." "Move," Derek mumbled, his voice still thick. We squeezed aside. He wrenched the knob and the lock snapped, making me wince at the noise. The stairs opened into a dark, low-ceilinged room. An old pantry or something. Tori flicked on her flashlight. The room was filthy and empty, another reason no one used these stairs. This time, she was first to the door. I knew what she'd find even before she announced it. "Locked." "Seriously?" Simon whispered. Derek strode past, awake now. He twisted the knob and, again, the lock snapped. He yanked the door. It didn't budge. He pulled harder, making the hinges groan. "It's spell-locked," said a voice behind us. We turned as Andrew stepped through the stairwell doorway. Simon's fingers flew up for a knockback spell. Derek wheeled to charge. Andrew swung his hand toward me. Sparks flew from his fingers. Simon and Derek both stopped. Andrew gave a wry smile. "I thought that might work." "Simon, you know how this goes. I've got a spell all set to launch. It only takes a word to finish it." What kind of spell?" I whispered, hypnotized by those sparks jumping at me. "Lethal," Andrew said. Derek growled. A real growl, so wolf-like it made the hair stand up on my neck. Off to the side, Tori mouthed something at me. I couldn't make it out, but guessed she was warning me she was going to cast. "No," Derek said, the word still almost a growl. His gaze was fixed on Andrew, and I thought he was talking to him, but then his eyes slid Tori's way. "No. Listen to Derek," Andrew said. "If he thought there was any way of getting to me before I launched this spell, he'd do it himself. Tori, move in front of me, please, so I can see your lips. Simon, sit on your hands. Derek." I glanced over at Derek. His gaze was riveted on Andrew, eyes blazing, the muscles in his jaw taut. Andrew said his name again, but he didn't seem to hear, fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. "Derek," Andrew said, sharper. "What?" Another growl passing as a word. Andrew flinched, then caught himself and squared his shoulders. "Turn around." "No." "Derek." Derek only glowered. Then he tilted his head and I couldn't see his expression, but something in it made Andrew draw back, just a little. His Adam's apple bobbed. He tried to straighten again, tried to meet Derek's gaze, but couldn't quite manage it. His fingers flexed, sparks jumping as they faced off. "Derek," I whispered. "Please. Don't do this." He started at the sound of my voice, breaking eye contact with Andrew, and the second he did, his expression changed, the wolf drawing back, Derek returning. "Do as he says," I said. "Please." He nodded and slowly turned to face the wall. "Thank you," Andrew said. "I'd hoped to avoid this, but I guess I underestimated the dose." "I don't want to hurt you, Derek." That's why I knocked you out. I don't want to hurt any of you. I'm here to protect you. I always have been. Simon snorted. Yeah, sure you don't want to hurt Derek. You asked those werewolves to kill him painlessly, right? I didn't try to kill Derek. No, you hired someone to do it. You're too big a coward to look him in the face and pull the trigger. Or maybe it was the mess you were worried about. I know how much you like your clothes. Bloodstains are such a to get out. I didn't. We found the emails. Simon jumped to his feet, then at a look from Derek, stopped and lowered himself to the floor again. We know you were in on it. Yes, I was in on the plan to hand Derek over to the pack. That's what you found, isn't it? Nothing about me giving them permission to kill him. That was entirely Russell's doing. Our plan was to turn him over to the pack. Tomas and I learned everything we could about them until we were satisfied they wouldn't kill a 16-year-old werewolf. They're like any other organized group of supernaturals, a place for their race to learn how to control their powers and live in the human world. A place where they can be with their own kind. I looked over at Derek, bracing myself to see a glimmer that said that's what he wanted. But he only stared at the wall, his gaze empty, emotionless. That's what I think is best for you, Derek, Andrew said. Werewolves belong with werewolves. And sons belong with fathers, I said quietly. Andrew stiffened. His gaze shot to mine, wary. We found those emails, too, I said. You kept their dad away from them. A pause. Then, yes, I did. And there's a reason. Sure there is, Simon said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Let me guess. Our dad is really an evil cabal sorcerer. Or an Edison Group double agent. Take your pick. He's a bad guy who'd kill us if he got the chance. No, Simon, Andrew said, his voice softening. Your dad is the best father I know. He gave up everything, his career, his friends, his life to go on the run to protect you. He refused to join our group because it could endanger you. His priority is you too, not taking down the Edison Group. He would never let me take you back to that lab to help stop them. If I called, he'd take you, all four of you, and run. He'll tell me to stop the Edison Group without you. Not a bad idea, Tori said. Andrew shook his head. If Kid takes you kids, then you're safe. If you're safe, then my people have no motivation to disband the Edison Group. I've been trying to convince them to do this for years, and now they're ready to act, but only if there's an immediate threat. If you're gone, they'll return to monitoring. And that's if they decide to let you go with him. Why wouldn't they? Simon said. Takes us off their hands. For many of them, that's the least of their worries, falling far behind their concern over the threat you pose to the supernatural world at large. If your dad comes, he shifted, hand flexing, the spell wavering for a split second before surging again. I hope that Russell acted alone when he told those werewolves to kill Derek and Chloe, but honestly, I don't know. Nice friends you've got there. Yes, some of them are my friends, Simon, but most are like other members of a club. We share one interest, nothing more. That interest is protecting our world. For me, that means shutting down the Edison Group. For some of them, it means shutting down us, I murmured. Don't listen to him, Chloe, Simon said. He's a liar and a traitor. If these people are so worried about us, why are they leaving us alone with just you to watch us? They aren't. That's why I had to stop you before you set foot out that door. Simon laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. Right, because they're lurking in the dark, waiting to slam us with energy bolt spells. No, wait, that's you, isn't it? Andrew lowered his fingers just a fraction, like he wanted to retract the threat. Yes, they're there, Simon. Not right outside the door, but close enough, guarding the escape routes. Because that's exactly what they fear most. That you'll escape. That you'll run to humans and expose us. Or you'll lose control and expose us. You ran from Lyle House and you ran from the Edison Group. What's the first thing you'll do if you get a whiff of trouble? You'll run and... Derek lunged. He hit me in the shoulder and knocked me to the floor, landing on top of me. His body jerked, like he'd been hit with the spell, and I let out a yelp, struggling to get up, but he held me down, whispering, "I'm okay. It's okay," until the words finally penetrated. I lifted my head to see Andrew caught in a binding spell as Simon hurtled to his feet. Simon tackled him and wrenched his hands behind his back. Derek got up to help. He pinned Andrew. "Why, you okay? He didn't hit you with a spell," I said, walking over, knees wobbly. "Yeah, he did." Andrew lifted his head. "And, as you can see, it was the non-lethal energy bolt." I said, "I don't want to hurt you, Derek. I wouldn't have hurt Chloe, either. I only needed you to listen to me." "We listened," Derek said. "Simon? I think I saw rope in the workshop." "Chloe? Stay here. Tori? Cover Simon, in case there's anyone else in the house." 33. Derek had more questions for Andrew. He asked about that night at Andrew's cottage. Andrew admitted he'd been part of the plan to stage his kidnapping and impersonate the Edison Group. The whole thing had been a setup, even giving us the opportunity to snatch a radio so we could hear about his escape. They'd set themselves up as our rescuers, so they could take us into protective custody. Simon came racing in and threw down a length of rope. "His cell phone. We can call Dad. Check his pockets." "It's in the nightstand by my bed," Andrew said. "And it's useless. Reception has been cutting in and out, and it's been out all night. I think someone's using a blocker on the house." "I'm not taking your word for it," Simon said. "I don't expect you to." Sure enough, we couldn't get reception. Even sneaking onto the roof didn't help. So Andrew was telling the truth about that. But what about the rest of it? Were his people really out there, waiting and watching? Or was this just another lie to keep us from running? We bound and gagged Andrew and put him in the basement. Then we talked. Not surprisingly, Tori wanted to make a break for it. Simon agreed. Neither wanted to be stuck here a moment longer than necessary. We should run and, if caught, as Tori said, what are they going to do? Shoot us. Problem was, that might be exactly what they'd do. We didn't think Russell had acted alone. Had it been him and Gwen? Or more? How many people in this group secretly would be happy to see us dead? A convenient solution to the dilemma of our inconvenient existence. Even if they didn't want us dead, if all four of us were caught sneaking through the woods with our backpacks, there'd be no question of what we were doing. We'd lose our chance to get away. So, one of us should go. But who? Derek was the most likely to be killed if caught. Tori might roll her eyes at the suggestion we were in mortal danger, but she wasn't volunteering either. And Derek wouldn't entertain the idea of either Simon or me going. We argued. Then we split up, Derek and Simon going downstairs to try to get more information from Andrew, and Tori deciding to keep searching Andrew's laptop, to see if there was anything there that we'd missed, something that might support or refute his claims. As she searched, I knelt and tried to summon Liz. She'd be the perfect solution to this problem. She could zip out unnoticed and see if anyone was guarding the house. I was careful to picture her clearly and call her name, so I wouldn't accidentally summon Royce or Dr. Banks. There was someone else I'd love to contact, my mom, but I couldn't think about that. Even if I got her, I doubted I could hold her here long enough to search for us. So I called Liz. And called, and didn't feel so much as a twitch. "Derek with you guys?" I jumped. Simon walked in. I got to my feet. "I thought he was with you," I said. "Nah. He made me test my blood sugar, and I grabbed a snack, but when I came back, Andrew was alone." "I'll help you look." I found Derek on the roof, looking, listening, and sniffing for signs of anyone guarding the house. "Oh, this is a great idea," I said. "The guy they're most likely to shoot is standing on the roof, giving them a perfect target. They won't see me up here." When I gave him a look, he sighed, like I was making a huge deal out of nothing, then sat and said, "Okay. I don't think it's safe for you to be up here. Just a few more minutes." He took off his coat and held it out beside him. "Sit down here, between me and the chimney. It's safe. It's not me I'm worried about. I'm fine." "How do you know that?" "They could have night vision goggles, sniper rifles." The corners of his mouth twitched and I braced myself for, "You watch too many movies." He didn't say it, but I knew he was thinking it. "You're not coming inside, are you?" "I will. Just sit down. I want to talk to you. And I want you to come in. We can talk there. I don't smell anyone out here. I think Andrew's lying." "Please, Derek. Come inside." "In a minute." I turned and walked away. "Chloe." I hoped he'd follow. I knew he wouldn't. He didn't. "Found him," I said, meeting Simon in the upstairs hall. "On the roof." "The roof?" I asked him to come down. "He won't. Because he thinks it's the right thing to do. The right thing for everyone else, that is. One day he's going to get himself." Simon ran his hands through his hair. "I can talk to him. I can yell at him. It just doesn't get through. He's not suicidal. It's not that he doesn't care if he lives or dies. It's just not a priority. Not if it interferes with protecting us. He can argue that's the wolf, but those two werewolves you met weren't throwing themselves in the line of fire to save each other, were they?" "No." He exhaled. "I might know a way to get him down. But don't hold your breath." "I won't." After Simon left, I knew what had to be done. There were only a few hours until daylight and we were sitting around like headlight-stunned deer, waiting for the car to hit us. We needed to know if there was really someone guarding the property, and there was only one way to do that properly. 34. I stepped out the back door and edged along the house, where Derek couldn't see me from the roof. The wind blew at my back, meaning my scent wouldn't carry to him. Good. I slipped into the woods. The best way to find out if there was anyone watching the house was to send out a decoy. Of the four of us, I was the best choice. I didn't have Derek's strength or Tori's and Simon's spells. I was the smallest and the least able to defend myself, and as much as I might hate that, right now it was an advantage because I posed the least threat. There was only one problem. The property was huge. That meant there was a lot of perimeter to cover. So how were they doing it? When Derek had asked that, Andrew said they were using spells. Simon wasn't convinced that was possible, but admitted he didn't know for sure. And what about last night? It made sense that they hadn't been guarding the property when I was out with Derek. They had Liam and Ramon to do that. But what about earlier, when Simon and I had gone for ice cream? Andrew said they'd been tracking us and hadn't been concerned, knowing Simon wouldn't leave Derek behind. Still, did I really think we were under guard? No. Andrew was setting up imaginary bogeymen to keep us in the house until his friends showed up in the morning and rescued him. So all I had to do was prove I could make it to the service station. To reach it, I needed to cut through the woods. As I walked, the lights from the house faded, and it got dark. Can't see my hand in front of my face, dark. I'd brought a flashlight, but once I was in the woods, I'd realized that wasn't my cleverest idea ever. I might as well stick a neon arrow over my head. Without the flashlight, I'd be just as likely to alert someone by stumbling and crashing around in the dark. So I used it with my hand over the light, letting only a faint glow seep through. The forest was dark, but it was far from silent. Twigs and leaves crackled. A mouse shrieked, its cry cut short by a sickening crunch. The wind whispered and wailed overhead. Even my feet made noise with every step. I tried to concentrate on that, but the more I did, the more it sounded like a heartbeat, thump thump, thump thump, thump thump. I swallowed and clutched the flashlight, plastic slipping under my sweaty fingers. Just keep walking. Stay on the path. One foot in front of the other. An owl hooted. I jumped. A snort, like a stifled laugh, and I spun, fingers slipping from the lens, the beam spinning in an arc, revealing nothing. Who did you think was there? One of Andrew's group? Laughing at you? I released my death grip on the flashlight and switched it to my other hand, wiping my damp palm on my jeans, then covered the beam again. I took a deep breath, breathing in air that smelled of rain. Rain and damp earth and the faint stink of decay. Dead things. Rotting things. Another deep breath, then I started walking again, trudging along, shoulders hunched, burrowing as far into the ski jacket as I could, the bitter wind freezing my nose and ears. I peered up, hoping for moonlight, seeing only patches of grey sky through the thick trees, branches entwined over my head like long, crooked. I looked down, but the view wasn't any better. Endless trees stretched out on all sides, dozens of thick trunks, any of which could be a ghost, standing there, watching me, waiting. The ground was softer here, and each step made a creepy, sucking sound. Undergrowth rustled to my left and I caught a whiff of decomposing flesh. An image flashed: the zombie dog and zombie rabbit and whatever else I'd raised last night. Had I really released them all? Or were they still out here, waiting for me? I walked faster. A wordless whisper sounded behind me. I wheeled, fingers tightening on the flashlight. The voice kept whispering, the sound rippling around me. I followed it with the wavering light beam, but saw nothing. Something hit my bandaged arm. I yelped and jumped. The flashlight flew from my hand, hit the ground, and went out. I dropped and fumbled around until I found it. I flicked the switch. Nothing. I knocked the flashlight against my knee, but it stayed off. I blinked hard, and gradually I could make out the squatting lumps of bushes and the gnarled trunks of trees. Afraid of the dark, a voice whispered. I knocked the flashlight again. Harder. Still nothing. That's a pretty red coat you're wearing. Little Red Riding Hood, all alone in the woods at night. Where's your big, bad wolf? A chill crept through me. Royce. Smart girl. Too bad you aren't smart enough to know what happens to little girls all alone in the woods at night. I remembered the residual of the girl I'd seen at the truck stop, bloodied and beaten, crawling through the undergrowth, trying desperately to escape her attacker, only to have her throat slashed, to bleed out in the forest, be buried there. Royce laughed, a deep laugh, rich with pleasure. He enjoyed my fear. Fed off it. I sucked it in, shoved the flashlight in my pocket, and started walking again. Do you know whose coat you're wearing? That's Austin's. His ski jacket. The color of blood. Fitting, isn't it? He died in a coat of red. Blood and brain and little bits of bone. I walked faster. When I saw you coming, for a second, I thought it was Austin. But you don't look like him. Not at all. You're a pretty little girl, you know that. I tried to block his voice, concentrate on the thump of my footsteps instead, but they were softer now, too soft, and there was nothing else, just this dark, silent forest and Royce's voice. He'd materialized now, walking beside me. My skin crawled, and I resisted the urge to rub my arms. I like pretty girls, he said. And they like me. Just gotta know how to treat them. His grin flashed in the darkness. Would you like to meet one of my girls? She's not far from here. Sound asleep under a bed of leaves and dirt. You can wake her up, have a nice girl-to-girl talk, ask her what I did. He leaned over, whispering in my ear. Or do you want me to tell you? I stumbled a little, and he laughed. I looked around, getting my bearings, but all I could see was the endless black forest. Something scampered across my path. Royce laughed again. Jumpy, aren't you? That's not good for a necromancer. Your nerves will be shot long before the madness gets you. I kept walking. Did they warn you about the madness? Yes, your uncle told me how we'll all go crazy like you. Hearing my voice calmed my racing heart. Me? I'm not crazy. I just like hurting things. Always have. Uncle Todd just wouldn't see it. Told himself Austin's puppy had an accident, the neighbor's cats were killed by coyotes, you know how grown UPS are. I walked faster. He kept pace beside me. When I said madness, I meant the curse of necromancy. They did tell you about that, didn't they? Or maybe they're afraid to. You're such a delicate little thing. I said nothing. See, after a lifetime of seeing ghosts, necromancers. I'm not interested. Don't interrupt me. His voice chilled. I know all about the madness, I lied, so you don't need to tell me. Okay, we'll talk about the girl, then. Do you want to hear what happened to her? I veered left. Are you walking away from me? That cold edge slid into his voice again. I made it 3 steps, then something hit the side of my head. I staggered. An egg-sized rock bounced on the ground and rolled into my path. Don't ignore me, Royce said. Don't interrupt me. Don't walk away from me. I stopped and turned. He smiled. That's better. Now, what do you want me to talk about? What I did to that girl? Or the curse of necromancy? Your choice. I gave him a mental shove. He flickered, then shot back, face screwed up with fury. Are you trying to me off? Because that's really a bad idea. He disappeared. I spun, trying to find him. A rock hit me in the back of the head, so hard I blacked out for a second, coming to on my knees, blood trickling down my neck. I leaped up and ran. The next stone hit my shoulder. I kept going, trying to envision him flying into the next dimension, but I couldn't focus, didn't dare shut my eyes even for a second, the undergrowth grabbing at my feet, branches whipping my face, path long gone. A rock hit the back of my knee and I stumbled. I managed to keep my balance, staggering forward, then breaking into a run again. A branch poked my eye. Then my foot snagged in a vine and down I went, sprawling face first on the ground. I pushed myself to my hands and knees. Something whacked me between the shoulder blades, and I was knocked flat again, face in the dirt. A half-buried stick jabbed my cheek hard enough to draw blood. I didn't try to get up this time. I lay on my stomach, head down, eyes closed, trying to send Royce back to the other side. I told you to stop, his voice trailed off as the blow struck a light, glancing blow. The stick fell beside me, as if he'd weakened too much to hold it. I pushed harder. The stick rose. I counted to 3, then rolled out of the way. He materialized then, face a mask of rage. I leaped to my feet. He swung again, wildly now, and I easily ducked it. He flew at me, wielding the stick. I mentally hit him with everything I had. He flew clear off his feet, landing flat on his back, stick falling. He grabbed for the stick, but it rolled away. He tried to snatch it. It jumped off the ground, spinning into the air. He glowered at me, like I was doing it. I wasn't. The stick dangled above his head. He jumped for it. It swung sideways, out of his reach. He jumped again. It dropped to the ground. Royce glared at me, and when he did, a figure appeared beside him, a teenage girl with long blonde hair, dressed in a Minnie Mouse nightshirt and orange giraffe socks. Liz. What? Royce followed my gaze, but she'd disappeared. I backed away. Royce grabbed for the stick. It rolled away from his fingers. He snatched it up and it snapped in two. When he glared my way, Liz appeared, wildly gesturing for me to banish him. I closed my eyes. It was a struggle to keep them shut and not brace against a blow, but I trusted that Liz had it under control. I pushed him as hard as I could, envisioning all kinds of helpful scenarios: Royce falling off a cliff, Royce falling off a skyscraper, Royce falling out an airlock. It wasn't hard to come up with ideas. Royce raged. He cursed. He threatened. But if he threw anything, it never reached me. His words surged and faded, growing weaker each time, until finally there was silence and Liz said, "He's gone." 35. Liz stood there, grinning. "We did it." I laughed, a shaky 2 seconds from crying laugh, my knees weak with relief. She walked over. "So, I'm going to guess that loser is a telekinetic half-demon like me. From the experiment?" I nodded. "That doesn't mean I'm related to him, does it?" "I don't think so." "You? 'Cause I've got enough nuts in my family tree already. And speaking of nuts, you have some kind of radar for them, don't you?" "Apparently. It worked on me, though my crazy quotient must not be high enough yet, because it took me forever to find you. I could hear you calling, but answering was another matter." "Thank you." My voice wobbled. Liz hurried over, arm going around my shoulders. I couldn't feel her hug, but I could imagine it. "Your poltergeist bodyguard is back on duty. Between the two of us, we can handle all the big, scary ghosts. I trounce 'em and you bounce 'em." She grinned. "Hey, that's pretty good." I smiled. "It is. And speaking of big and scary, I'm going to guess you're out here with Derek, helping him change into a wolf. You'd better grab him, because there's more in these woods than losers throwing sticks and stones. There are losers with spells and guns." She studied me. And why do I get the feeling that's not a surprise? I explained, as quickly and quietly as I could. That Andrew guy is telling the truth, she said. There are 4 people out here, dressed in black, carrying radios and rifles. That's not a lot, but they've got some high-tech gadgetry on their side, normal and supernormal. They've set up tripwires and those infrared laser things, and I heard them talking about something called perimeter spells. We need to get back, then, and... SHHH. Someone's coming. I crouched. Liz whispered in my ear. I don't think it's our poltergeist pal, but wait here. I'll go check. She took off. I huddled as close to the ground as I could get. When a huge figure reared up in front of me, I let out a yelp. It sprang forward. It's me, whispered a familiar voice. Tr. Thwack. He stumbled, Liz behind him, a sturdy branch raised. Liz, it's... She hit him again, a home run swing between the shoulders, and he went down with an oomph and an oath. She recognized the voice or the curse and leaned over, getting a look at him. Whoops. I'd say he deserved that, always sneaking up on people. Simon appeared from the direction Derek had come. He glanced around. Hi, Liz, I pointed and he turned her way. Hey, Simon. I relayed her greeting as Derek got up, muttering. Did someone say Liz is here? Tori stumbled out of the forest. When I pointed at Liz, Tori smiled the brightest smile I'd seen from her since, well, I don't know when. Liz had been Tori's friend at Lyle House, and they said hello, me playing go-between. What are you guys doing out here? I asked. We're your official search party, Tori said. Complete with bloodhound. She waved at Derek, who was brushing off his jeans. I left you a note, I said to Derek. I told you where I was going and what I was doing. He got it, Simon said. Didn't matter. Derek glowered. You think leaving a note makes it okay to do something? Don't say stupid, I warned. Why not? It was stupid. Simon winced and murmured, ease off, brother. That's okay, I said. I'm used to it. I looked up at Derek. He wavered for a second, then crossed his arms, jaw setting. It was stupid, he said. Risky and dangerous. Those guys could be out here with guns. They are. I turned to Simon and Tori. Liz saw them. Andrew was telling the truth. We need to get back inside before they hear us fighting. It was a silent walk back. At the rear door, Liz stopped. She reached, palm out, and it was like pressing against a pane of glass. I think there's a spell to keep ghosts out, like at Lyle House, I said. You might be able to get in the basement or the attic, like you did there. Other ghosts have. I'll go. I'm fine out here, Chloe. You go do your thing. I hesitated. She smiled. Seriously. I'm not going anywhere. When you need me, I'll be here, okay? I barely got through the door before I was wishing I'd stayed outside with Liz. You were mad at me for staying on the roof, Derek said, bearing down on me. So I took off to spite you. Course not. But you were mad at me for taking a risk. So you did the same, to prove your point. No fight with you is ever worth risking my life, Derek. And I wasn't mad at you. Upset, yes. Worried, definitely. But if I thought my opinion counted more with you now, it's a good thing you straightened me out fast. He blanched at that. I went out there for the very reason I said in my note. Because we had to know and I was the best suited to get the answer. How? Do you have night vision? Superhuman strength? Superhuman senses? No, but the guy who did wouldn't come off the roof, so the next best choice was the person without all that. The one they know isn't a threat. She's right, Simon murmured, coming up behind us. You don't like what she did, but you know it needed to be done. Then we should have decided that together. Would you have listened? I asked. He didn't answer. I continued. I couldn't talk to you, because you'd have stopped me. I couldn't talk to Tori because you'd blame her for letting me leave. I couldn't talk to Simon because he'd know you'd blame him, so he'd stop me, too. I don't like sneaking around, but you didn't leave me a choice. It's black and white to you. If Simon or I take a risk, we're stupid and reckless. If you do, we're stupid for worrying. I never said that. Did you listen to me up on the roof? I said I was coming in. When? I left 20 minutes later, and Simon was still up there, trying to talk you down. I shook my head. Enough. We don't have time to bicker. We need to make plans. 36. We considered having Liz scout for safe passage, but we were dealing with spells and high-tech alarms, things a ghost wouldn't trigger. We had to presume the perimeter was locked tight. We also had to presume it wouldn't be locked as tight during the day, when they had Andrew and Margaret and the two new people to keep an eye on us. That's when we had to escape. Until then, we needed to play along with their plan. Andrew had used us, now we'd use him. That meant setting him free, though. We racked our brains to come up with another solution, but there wasn't one. To escape, we had to convince them everything was okay. To do that, Andrew had to be right where they expected him to be. We weren't letting him in on our scheme, of course. We'd leave him in the basement until morning, then announce that we'd decided the only way to take down the Edison group was to follow his plan. Come morning, when Margaret and any others arrived, they'd find us eager to get going. So, we hoped, they'd let their guard down, and that's when I'd send Liz out to make sure the exit route was clear. If that failed, we'd fight our way out. Then we'd call Mr. B. It was almost 6 when we finished our plans, meaning we still had at least a couple of hours before Margaret showed up. Tori kept working on Andrew's computer. By this time, we didn't expect to get anything more from it, but it gave her a purpose. The guys watched Andrew. That gave them a purpose. And me? I was lost. Scared and lost and frustrated. And hurt. As much as I tried not to think about Derek, I couldn't help it. I found a pad of paper and a pen, and went into the parlor to turn tonight's walk through the woods into a movie scene. I hadn't written a single line since first arriving at Lyle House. Right now I desperately needed that escape. I was sketching out the scene when the door opened. I looked up to see Derek standing there. I kept my expression neutral. Got something for you. He held out an old 8mm video camera. I found it downstairs. It's not working, but I think I can fix it. A video camera? What would I use it for? Recording our great escape? I didn't say that, because I knew it wasn't the point. This was a gift, a way to say I know I screwed up and I'm sorry. His eyes begged me to take it. Just take it. Forgive him. Forget what happened. Start over. And that's what I wanted to do, accept his gift and smile and see that spark in his eyes, and I took the camera and set it on the table. It's cold in here, Derek said. Is the radiator working? He walked over and put his hands on it. Not very well. I'll grab a blanket. I don't need. Just a section. He took off. A minute later, he came back and handed me a folded blanket. I laid it on my lap. He looked around, then crossed the room and sat on the couch. After a few moments of silence, he said, "Why don't you come over here? More comfortable than that chair. Warmer, too, closer to the radiator." "I'm fine. Hard to talk to you over there, across the room." He moved down to the end of the couch, though there'd already been plenty of room. He put his arm along the back. He tried for a smile and didn't really manage it, but my heart still did a little flip. "He's sorry, Chloe. He really is a sweet guy. Don't be about this. And don't screw it up. Just go over there. Give him a chance and, in no time, you'll forget everything else." And that's exactly why I stayed in my chair. I didn't want to forget everything else, or the next thing I knew, he'd be back on that roof, putting his life in danger. "You don't get to do this," I said finally. "Do what?" He asked the question innocently enough, but his gaze dipped slightly. "I'm sorry. That's what I'm trying to say, Chloe. That I'm sorry." "For what?" He looked up, confused. "Making you mad?" I didn't answer, just got up to leave. I made it as far as the door. Then he was there, behind me, hand on my elbow. I didn't look back at him. I didn't dare. But I stopped and I listened. "When I got mad about you leaving," he said, "it wasn't because I thought it was stupid or I didn't think you'd be careful. You were just worried about me." An exhale, relieved that I understood. "Yet." I turned. "Because you think I'm worth it." He put his fingers under my chin. "I absolutely think you're worth it. But you don't think you are." His mouth opened. "Shut. That's what this is about, Derek. You won't let us worry about you because you don't think you're worth it." "But I do. I absolutely do." I lifted onto my toes, put my hands around his neck, and pulled him down. When our lips met, that first jolt, it was everything I hadn't felt with Simon, everything I'd wanted to feel. His hands went around my waist, pulling me closer. Simon's footsteps thudded through the hall. We jumped apart. "And he says I have lousy timing," Derek grumbled. Then he called, "What's up?" "Andrew says he needs to go to the bathroom," Simon said, walking in. "I'm all for saying too bad, but..." "Fine. I'll handle it," Derek said. "Chloe? Wanna come? I need to talk to Simon." He gave me a weird look at that, but only for a second, like he wasn't jealous, just maybe a little hurt that I wasn't jumping to come with him. "It's important," I said. "Grab Tori, though. She can help with Andrew." He nodded and left. 37. "So," Simon said. "Looks like you and Derek are getting along again. What happened? Did he give you the look?" "Look? You know. The one that makes him look like a whipped puppy, and makes you feel like a jerk for doing the whipping." "Ah, that one. So it works on you, too." He snorted. "It even works on Dad. We give in, we tell him it's okay, and the next thing you know, he's chewing up slippers again." I laughed. Simon slumped into a chair. "The problem is, you know he's trying to do the right thing. So what if he doesn't think about himself enough? Would we rather he was a self-centered jerk?" He shook his head, then said, "You wanted to talk. There's something I need to suggest, but Derek's not going to like it." "Spill." I told him what I had in mind. When I finished, he swore. Bad idea. I said. No, good idea. But you're right, he'll never go for it. If you even suggest it, he'll think it's a test and either get mad or do it to humor you, which won't help, because if he's just humoring us, he won't stay there. Stay where? A voice asked. We looked over as Tori walked in. I thought I heard Derek calling me, she said. What's up? I told her my idea. We should have done that the minute we knew they were gunning for him, she said. Why would he complain? It's not like you're telling him to get lost, just hide out for a few hours, make them think he's gone. She sat on the sofa. You've got my vote, not that it counts for anything. It does, I said. You're part of this. We need to start acting like you are. I looked at Simon. He shrugged. I guess so. Gosh, I've never felt so wanted, Tori said. I trust you not to stab me in the back for fun, he said. But if it's in your best interests, I'm not turning around. Just in case. So I've gone from evil incarnate to ordinary. I can live with that. She stretched out her legs. So who's telling Derek? No one, I said. That's the problem. He won't do it, and even by suggesting. You want me to lie low? The deep rumble from the doorway had us all look up. Derek stepped in. Pretend I took off. He turned to Simon. Is that what you want? It is, Simon said. Chloe. It's not about what we want, I said. Who was the one Andrew knocked out last night? Who's the one they're all watching? They want you gone, Derek, and I honestly don't think they'll make a move until you are. He met my gaze, searching it, like he was looking for something there. He must have seen it, because he nodded. Okay. You're right. We need them to relax, and they won't do that with me around. Not exactly the rationale I hoped for, but I took it. We decided the best place for Derek was the attic. There were windows that Derek could jump out of easily, so it was safer than the basement. Dirtier, but safer. While Simon helped Derek gather food and blankets, I went outside and called Liz. I need to know if you can get in the attic, I said. I'm one step ahead of you. I can get on the roof, in the attic, and kind of in the basement, but not so well. I told her about our plans for Derek. You want me to keep him company? She grinned. We can play tic-tac-toe in the dust. She saw my expression and stopped smiling. That's not what you need, is it? I'm worried about him. He's not very good at looking after himself. And he could use a poltergeist bodyguard. I nodded. Take care of him for me. Please. I will. Next we released Andrew. We told him that Derek had decided it was safer for everyone if he left. We'd tried to stop him, but he'd snuck off into the woods, where he was presumably going to hide until he found a way to get off the property. We didn't tell Andrew that we planned to find a way off the property, too. As far as he knew, we were going along with his plans. Margaret showed up while we were having breakfast, and we discovered another advantage to Derek's disappearance: it gave us an excuse for being anxious and quiet. As we were finishing, the doorbell rang. All three of us jumped, Simon dropping his spoon into the bowl with a clatter. I guess Derek wouldn't be ringing the bell, hey? I said. He might. Simon pushed back his chair. I'll answer. I knew what he was thinking, hoping that it was his dad. The chances of Mr. B ringing a bell at a house where his sons might be captive seemed pretty remote, but I followed. if only as an excuse to get away from Andrew and Margaret. I got to the door as Simon was swinging it open. There stood Gwen. "Hey, guys," she said with a strained smile. She held up a box. "No donuts this time. I learned my lesson, but I brought some amazing muffins. You can eat those, right?" Sure," Simon said. Simon backed up to let her in. He shot a glance at me, clear "What's she doing here?" "Andrew's been trying to get in touch with you," I said. "I know. Work. You know how it is." A forced laugh. "No, I guess you don't, lucky kids. Enjoy it while you can, because the truth is," she leaned over and whispered, "grown-up life sucks. But I'm here now and ready for action. Andrew's message said we're leaving for Buffalo today." I nodded. "Great. I'm just in time, then. Come on in and let's chow down on these muffins. They are amazing." When we showed Gwen into the kitchen, I tried to gauge Andrew's and Margaret's reaction. Both seemed surprised. For Andrew, it was pleasant surprise. For Margaret, not so much. She didn't seem angry, just annoyed at the flighty girl zipping in and out at whim. They adjourned to the living room. The three of us made excuses and took off. "She's lying," Tori said. "I don't care how ditzy she is, no one ignores a half-dozen urgent calls, then sails in with blueberry muffins." "Russell sent her to spy," Simon said. "He's up to something." "It doesn't matter," I said. "Whatever their scheme, we'll be gone soon enough. Just keep an eye on her until then. I'm going to send Liz out looking for escape routes." 38. I was nearing the stairs when Simon hailed me. "Can you give something to Derek?" he whispered. "It's in my room." We went up. He pulled his bag from its hiding place, took out his sketch pad, folded a page in quarters, and handed it to me. "Give him that. And tell him it's okay." "Okay." Simon's gaze dropped and he shrugged. "He'll understand." After a moment's pause, he looked up again and forced a smile. "Now let's do this and get out of here." Simon walked me to the stairs leading to the attic and roof. "Chloe?" "Simon." It was Margaret, downstairs. Simon swore. He glanced at me. "Can you go?" I said. "I really need to send Liz out or we'll never get away." He nodded. I slid into the nearest room and shut the door as he called, "Right here. I need to speak to you too." Margaret's pumps clicked up the stairs, underscored by the thump of Simon's feet, running toward her. I leaned against the door to listen. "Have you seen Chloe?" she asked. No," Simon said. "She was trying to find a quiet place to do some writing." "Did you check the sunroom, around back?" "She likes." "I'll look." "I need you to go to the basement and help Tori bring up extra chairs for lunch." "Lunch? We just had breakfast. And we have plenty of chairs." "No, we don't. The rest of the group is arriving to make final preparations. Andrew's gone to the airport to pick them up, so I need you kids to help with the chairs. Tori can handle." "I asked you, Simon." "All right," Simon said, raising his voice to be sure I heard. "I'll get the chairs from the basement. I wouldn't bother Chloe with it, though. Those chairs are bigger than she is." Margaret sent him on his way, saying she'd be right down to supervise. Simon's sneakers pounded down the steps. Then Margaret called Gwen, who answered from downstairs. "I need to speak to Chloe," Margaret said when Gwen got there. "I brought a necromancy book for her." Simon said, "She's up here." You look at the front of the house, and I'll take the back. Simon had said I was probably in the sunroom, on the main level. I looked down at the door handle. There was a lock, with an old-fashioned key on the inside. I turned it as slowly as I could. I glanced around. I was in one of the unused bedrooms. There weren't any closets, but the wardrobe across the room looked big enough to hold me. As I stepped toward it, my sneakers squeaked. I considered pulling them off, but the floor was filthy, and it'd be just my luck to step on a rusty thumbtack and yelp loud enough to bring everyone running. I picked my way across the room. I was halfway to the wardrobe when a thump stopped me mid-stride. I looked up. Derek? I listened. Silence. I took another slow step. Then another. Chloe. It was Gwen's voice, a stage whisper from just outside the door. I froze. Chloe? Are you up here? Then lower, under her breath. Please, be up here. Please. I looked at the wardrobe. It was too far for a silent dash. Chloe? I know you're here. I looked around. There was a huge dresser beside me, draped in a sheet. I backed up alongside it and crouched. The door is locked, silly. She can't get in. I didn't care. If I was found hiding in a locked room, they'd be suspicious, and we couldn't afford that. I should have just gone with Simon. Please, Chloe. Her voice sounded like she was inside the room. You're imagining things. Why did I come back? Gwen whispered. What was I thinking? Then, louder, there you are. Thank God. My heart slammed into my ribs. I looked at the dresser, but I was completely concealed, the sheet right down to the floor, hiding even my feet. She's bluffing. She can't see you. She can't possibly. Gwen stepped in front of me, her short hair wild around her pale face, makeup streaked, eyes huge. Come on, Chloe. Quickly. I rose. I was looking for. It doesn't matter. You need to find Simon and Tori. Do you know where they are? In the basement, but... Hurry. She reached for me, then stopped short, and pulled back. You have to warn them. About what? She shook her head. Just come on. She waved me to the door. I grabbed the knob and turned. It stopped. Locked. The door was still locked. Open it, Chloe. Please. I reached for Gwen. She backpedaled, but not fast enough. My fingers touched her arm, and passed through. I clamped my hand over my mouth. Don't scream, Chloe. Okay? Please, please, don't scream. I nodded. Oh God. She's a ghost. She's dead. She couldn't be. I just heard her a minute ago, heard her footsteps when she headed down the hall to search. And that was the last time I'd heard them. I remembered Margaret's words. Simon said she's up here. You look down there, and I'll take this end. Then a thump. The sound of a body falling. Margaret killed Gwen? That was crazy. Impossible. Sure, she just happened to fall and break her neck while searching for you. I swallowed. Margaret, I whispered. Seems that old bag is a whole lot nastier than I ever gave her credit for, Gwen muttered. I didn't like the way things were going. I'd heard things. Margaret and Russell. That's why I took off when Andrew called. I didn't want to get involved. But I couldn't do it. I had to come back, thought I should warn Andrew, help him watch out for you kids. Bad idea, obviously. Never even got to the warning part. I wheeled toward the door. Derek. Gwen stepped in front of me. Is he someplace safe? I walked through her. Chloe, is he someplace safe? Because if he is, then you have to leave him there. You need to warn Simon and Tori. You said Margaret sent them to the basement for chairs. For the others coming this afternoon. No others are coming, Chloe. I raced to the door. As I unlocked it, Gwen slipped through the wall. Careful, I whispered. Margaret can see me. I know. Gwen came back and waved me out, motioning for me to dash into the next room and wait again. That's how we did it, me darting from room to room, heading for the rear stairs as Gwen scouted the way. I did as she said, but inside I was a panicked mess. All I could think was, Gwen's dead, and now Simon and Tori are in the basement, and Derek's in the attic, and am I making the right choice, and will I get to them in time, and oh my god, what is going on? I was nearly at the back stairs, when Gwen motioned for me to hide. I scooted under a bed, covering my mouth to keep from breathing in dust. Margaret's heels clicked in the hall. They seemed to be receding. Please. Please, please yes. She marched down the main stairs as she called a name. Russell. Russell was here? Oh god, I had to warn Derek. I had to get up to the attic. And if he finds out Simon's in danger, he'll barrel down there and get himself killed. He's better off where he is, thinking everything is okay. I closed my eyes and breathed in and out until my heart slowed to a gallop. Gwen checked to make sure the coast was clear, then I hurried to the servants' stairs. With Gwen watching, I made it to the bottom of the stairs. From there I could see the basement door, ajar. I listened for Simon and Tori. For once I'd have loved to hear the sound of their bickering, but instead I heard Margaret and Russell's muffled voices coming from behind a closed door, a door between me and the basement. Gwen led me forward, step by careful step. I listened for a break in the conversation or the sound of footsteps, but they kept talking. I was 3 steps from the basement when Margaret's pumps clicked against the hardwood. I looked toward the basement, but it was too far. I wheeled and pushed open the nearest door. No. Gwen whispered. I turned. She madly waved me out. Then, in mid-gesture, she disappeared. I froze for a second, just long enough to hear Margaret turning the doorknob, then spun to find a hiding place. I stopped short. Andrew stood on the other side of a coffee table. He was looking at me, frowning. Chloe, he said, my name coming slowly, carefully, like he wasn't quite sure. Hold on, Margaret said as the door creaked open. I thought I heard someone. Andrew's eyes widened. He motioned me over, gesturing for me to hide behind the table. It was long and solid, so I wouldn't be seen. I hesitated only a second, then ran for it. My sneaker slid in something and I tried to keep my balance, but my other foot slid, too, the floor slick, and I crashed onto the coffee table, hands smacking the top of it, knees cracking against the edge. We've found Chloe, Margaret said from behind the doorway, her voice completely calm. I looked up to see Russell coming at me, a syringe in his hand. I backed away, scrambling over the other side of the table. Andrew, I said, looking up. Help. Andrew was gone. A needle jabbed into the back of my leg. I kicked Russell, hearing him grunt as my foot made contact. The room swayed. I blinked hard, fighting to stay conscious. I tried to get up, get off the table, but my arms gave way and I toppled over the other side. I hit something soft and rolled off it, landing in a warm puddle. I struggled to focus and lifted my hands. Blood. I was lying in a pool of blood. I tried getting up, but my muscles refused, and I slumped to the floor. The last thing I saw was Andrew's face, inches away, dead eyes staring into mine. The rest of the audiobook will be continued in the next episode. Join us on Patreon for early access or more great audiobooks. A link is provided in the video description.